Hi friends, hello. How are we doing today? How is everybody? I'm doing quite well. I've had a much better week than last week. Yeah. I thought that today we could go through some of my favorite books, some books that have really stuck out to me when I've read them. Obviously, you can see I have quite a, prominent book collection in my room. I used to work at a bookstore in high school. I worked at an independent bookstore in my hometown called Curious Iguana. It's a lovely little place. And if you've ever worked at a bookstore before, you know that they send advanced readers copies to, the publishers send advanced readers copies to the bookstores to read and decide if they want to stock that book. And once those advanced readers copies have been read, once the book itself is published, people who work at the bookstore get to take them home for free. So that's where a lot of my collection built up. I was also an English major in college, and I went to a liberal arts school. Obviously, just you can tell from looking at me. I went to a historically women's college that had about 1,300 students. So, I think that checks for my general vibe, but took a lot of English classes, bought all the books for those classes, and I've kept a lot of them. And then just other books have accumulated throughout my life. This is not the extent of my collection, but I still have a ton of books back at my parents' house. These were just the ones that I A, deemed important enough to take with me, or B, I put on my to-be-read list. I haven't read every single book on this shelf, as anyone who owns books knows. But let's talk about some of the books I have read. So, I've brought this one up before, but this was a recent read. House of Frank by Kay Sinclair. I got this at a local independent bookstore in my current area, and this is by a author who lives in my city, local author, and it is, as I said on the back, a warm and hopeful story of a lonely witch consumed by grief who discovers a whimsical cast of characters in a magical arboretum. Powerless witch Psycha is ready to enact her sister's final request, to plant her remains at the famed Ash Gardens. When Psycha arrives at the always stormy sanctuary, she is welcomed by its owner, an enormous, knit-cardiganed mythical beast named Frank, who offers her a role as one of the estate's caretakers. Overcome with grief, Psycha accepts, desperate to put off her final farewell to her sister. As Psycha works harder, in avoidance of her pain, she learns more about Frank, the decaying house at Ash Gardens, and the lives of the motley staff, including bickering twin cherubs, a mute ghost, a cantankerous elf, and an irritating half-witch, among others. Over time, she rediscovers what it means to love and be wholly loved, and how to allow her joy and grief to coexist. Warm and inventive, House of Frank is a stirring portrait of the ache of loss and the healing embrace of love. A, I thought this cover was awesome. I think it's very well done. B, this book made me cry. I totally didn't used to be someone who cried at books, but the older I've gotten, I've definitely gotten way more apt to cry. But this one is quite poignant at times, and yet also includes a, queer romance between two witches. It's it's a fun time. But I've already talked about this one, like I said, so we're gonna put that one aside. I am gonna go through these relatively fast, but I think I have a couple that I'll talk for longer on because some of these books really mean a lot to me. This one, I don't know why I'm embarrassed that I bought it at Target. Actually, I do. Buy from your local indie bookstore. Don't buy from Target. But I bought this one from Target several months ago because I had a work shift for my second job that was much, much later than the time I got off of work at my first job. But because it was an hour away, I didn't feel like driving home and then going back out and driving for an hour. So I left from my first job, drove to the location of the second job, and got there like 4 hours early. Might not have been 4, that might be an over-exaggeration, but I got there quite early. On the way over, I hit a Target, and I bought this book to read while I was waiting for the shift to start. I really enjoyed it. It's called Before We Forget Kindness, but you can't tell because of the Target sticker on the front. And this is actually the 5th book in a series, but it's not like continuous series. It's not a continuous story being told. It's a bunch of little stories. So it doesn't really matter that I read it out of order. But the 5th novel in the internationally best-selling Before the Coffee Gets Cold series. Tucked away within a small back alley in Tokyo is a cafe that has been serving carefully brewed coffee for more than 100 years. The regular patrons know the cafe's legend by heart. If they follow the rules, they'll be allowed the unique opportunity to travel back in time, as long as they return to the present before their coffee gets cold. In the next novel, in the sensational Before the Coffee Gets Cold series, the mysterious Tokyo cafe welcomes 4 new guests: a father who could not allow his daughter to get married, a woman who couldn't give Valentine's Day chocolates to her loved one, a boy who wants to share his smile with his divorced parents, and a wife holding a child with no name. Another moving and heartwarming tale from Tokikazu Kawaguchi. In Before We Forget Kindness, our new visitors wish to go back into their past to find closure and comfort so that they can embark on a beautiful future. So, this book and this series, I believe, is translated from Japanese. And I will say the prose is quite simple, not in a bad way. I definitely don't mean that as a criticism. I think at points the simplicity is a merit to it. But it was a very easy read. I totally understand why this series is best-selling, and why it has been translated. Again, it made me cry. An easy cry. easy read, easy cry, makes you feel good, makes you feel sad. Not usually the kind of book I tend to read. I definitely started it worrying that it was intentionally crafted just to, like, make you sad. I don't know how to explain why that annoys me or what specific, like, times that it annoys me, but I feel like sometimes I can tell when an author sits down and is just like, I want to, I don't know, because sometimes people want to write sad things and it comes across really, really well. Sometimes it comes across as a little not genuine. I would make the argument that this did feel quite genuine. And it's okay to read simple things, you know? It's okay to read things that a bunch of people like, because sometimes a bunch of people like them for a reason. Now, there are plenty of books out there that a bunch of people like that are really, really, really not good, from my personal opinion, but I don't think this is one of them. Okay. Next up, we have The Road to Roswell, a novel by Connie Willis. This is a bit of a change from our last two books. The back of the book says, when level-headed Francie arrives in Roswell, New Mexico, for her college roommate's UFO-themed wedding, complete with a true believer bridegroom, she can't help but roll her eyes at all the wide-eyed talk of aliens, which obviously don't exist. Imagine her surprise, then, when she is abducted by one. Odder still, her abductor is far from what the popular media have led her to expect, with a body like a tumbleweed and a mass of lightning-fast tentacles. Nor is Francie the only victim of the alien's abduction spree. Before long, he has acquired a charming con man named Wade, a sweet little old lady with a casino addiction, a retiree with a huge RV and a love for old westerns, and a UFO-chasing nutjob who is thoroughly convinced that the alien intends to probe them and or take over the planet. But the more Francie gets to know the alien, the more convinced she becomes that he's not an invader, that he's in trouble and she has to help him, only she doesn't know how, or even what the trouble is. Part alien abduction adventure, part road trip saga, part romantic comedy, The Road to Roswell is packed full of men in black, Elvis impersonators, tourist traps, rattlesnakes, chemtrails, and close encounters of the third, fourth, and fifth kind. Can Francie, stuck in a neon green bridesmaid's dress, save the world and still make it back for the wedding? I'm not gonna lie to you, I loved this book. It is so funny. I laughed out loud while I was reading it. It is, I don't know, it's just like unique and funny and well done, well written. It is a lot of them driving around Western America, and through the deserts and stuff, because he doesn't abduct them in a spaceship, he abducts them in her rental car and just like kidnaps her and doesn't let her leave, in a funny way, not a traumatic way. He's an alien. It's really funny, it's really good, I highly recommend, and I think it has a good ending. I'm very picky about endings. There are a couple things that I was like, wait, I still have questions about that. Like, I didn't quite figure that out. But overall, I think it ends well. And this, I can't remember where I picked it up. I want to say it was one of the ones I picked up at a bookstore in Brooklyn. voice in it is really well done. Alright. Should we get to one of my big favorites? This book means a lot to me. It's very important to who I am as a person. It's called Run, Don't Walk: The Curious and Chaotic Life of a Physical Therapist Inside the Walter Reed Army Medical Center. This may seem like an odd book to be someone's most impactful book. Maybe not most, but it is definitely in the top 10, and it might even be in the top 5. I'm not gonna lie to you. I might put it in the top 5. It's by Adele Levine, and let's read you the summary. It is quite long. I'm very sorry. In her years at the Walter Reed Army Medical Center, physical therapist, it is a memoir. I want to let you know this is nonfiction. Physical therapist Adele Levine rehabilitated soldiers admitted in worse and worse shape, as body armor and advanced trauma care helped save the lives, if not the limbs, of American troops fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq. Walter Reed quickly became the world leader in amputee care. But no matter the injury, physical therapy began the moment the soldiers emerged from surgery. Days at Walter Reed were intense, chaotic, and heartbreaking, but they were also filled with a fierce camaraderie and unlikely comedy. Working in a glassed-in fishbowl gymnasium, Levine, her colleagues, and their combat-injured patients were on display at every moment to tour groups, politicians, and celebrities. Some would tear up openly at the sight, but inside the glass and out of earshot, the PTs and the rowdy patients cracked jokes, played pranks, and compared stumps. With dazzling storytelling, Run, Don't Walk brings to life a motley array of characters who leap from the page, including a retired lieutenant colonel who stays up late at night baking cake after cake, and the militant dietitian who is always after him, a surgeon who speaks only in farm analogies, a therapy dog gone rogue, and Levine's toughest patient, the wild, defiant Cosmo, who comes in with one leg amputated and his other leg shattered. Run, Don't Walk is also an elegy for Walter Reed, a bustling, larger-than-life place, haunting and beautiful, where modern trauma surgeons and state-of-the-art technology stood adjacent to the historic 100-year-old buildings of America's oldest army hospital. There, Levine reveals the poignancy and rigors of rehab, from the indomitable medevac flight from the battlefield to a soldier's first steps on new legs, determined not just to walk again, but to run. Deeply humane and absorbing, Run, Don't Walk illuminates the pain of loss, the joy of recovery, and the redemptive power of humor in the face of any challenge. It takes us inside a fast-paced, fascinating world we have never seen before. Alright, that is quite long, but I picked this book up in middle school after a assembly at school about physical therapy, and I found Levine's description of physical therapy to be so interesting, and descriptions of amputees, just the body in general, and how the body is so resilient and yet so fragile. I'm definitely not the kind of person to consume media about the military, but to me, at the time that I read this book, that was not what it was about. It was about physical therapy, it was about the body. I actually ended up writing an email to the author. I believe I was 13 years old at the time, just just saying how interesting I found it, and that it made me want to pursue physical therapy, and just all of that. Looking back, I think it impacted me in very different ways. I did not pursue physical therapy, if you've heard any bits of my life, but I work pretty closely with PTs and OTs and speech therapists at my job, but for a different reason. But looking back, so Adele Levine responded to my email. She said she wished me luck, she thanked me for the email, and she also said that I wrote very well for a 13-year-old, and that perhaps a future in writing was also in the cards for me. And that is definitely a bit more on point. I've been doing a lot of writing, and I am actually, for the past year or so, I've been working on a novel that features an amputee as the main character. And I fully credit this book to my interest in the body. This character is an ex-principal dancer who lost her leg in a car accident, and she's grappling with the, I used to have this body in peak condition, and now I don't. And I do think that aligns a lot with a lot of the stories in Run, Don't Walk. And not on purpose, but I think it definitely piqued my interest in just in the body and talking about the body in writing. And also, very importantly to me, this was the first book I read by an openly gay author. She talks a lot about being gay in this book, or not a lot, but she has a chapter on her love life and stuff. And as a middle schooler who's figuring out my sexuality, looking back at it as an adult, it was really important to me, and I'm just so happy that I read this book. That was really long. Alright, what next? I have quite a pile. I don't know if we're gonna get through it all. This is an advanced reader's copy called Maria Maria. The book is definitely out by now. Let me see, does it have a date on it? Yeah, this is from April 2022. So this was after I quit the bookstore, but I did go back to visit and they would give me ARCs. This is a short story collection. Alright, let's read the back of the book. The first witch of the waters was born in destruction. The moon named her Maria. From former PN America Emerging Voices fellow Maritza K. Rubio comes Maria Maria, an inimitable collection set across the tropics and the megacities of the Americas. Readers will be enticed and infuriated as the characters negotiate with nature to cast their desired ends, such as the enigmatic community college professor in Brujeria for Beginners, the disturbingly faithful widow in Tijuca, so sorry, and the lonely little girl in Burial, who awakens a saber-toothed tiger, brimming with sharp wit and ferocious female intuition. The book bubbles over into a novella of fantastical proportions, a Tropicoth family drama set in a reimagined California micro-rainforest about the legacies of three Marias, possibly all Marias. Writing in prose so lush it threatens to creep off the page, Rubio emerges as a bold voice Oh, this is wrong. Bold voice, new voice in contemporary short fiction. That's what it actually says on the back. That's why this is an arc. This book was lovely. I don't usually read a lot of short story collections. I think I should. I've enjoyed every one that I've read, but I tend not to pick them up. This toes the line of magic, disturbing but not grotesque. There was nothing I read that I'm pretty sensitive, that I wouldn't read again, you know? And just her writing is absolutely lovely. I think I read this book in a day. I sat on my couch and read the whole thing. Also, the cover is awesome. Just really amazing. Yeah. But speaking of things I grabbed the wrong one. Things I wouldn't necessarily read again because I was so disturbed by them. The Vegetarian by Han Kang. I was assigned this book for a creative novel writing class that I took my senior year of college. I read the whole thing. It's very good. I don't think I'll be reading it again. This is a beautiful, unsettling novel in 3 acts about rebellion and taboo, violence and eroticism, and the twisting metamorphosis of a soul. Before the nightmares began, Young Hai and her husband lived an ordinary, controlled life. But the dreams, invasive images of blood and brutality torture her, driving Young Hai to purge her mind and renounce eating meat altogether. It's a small act of independence, but it interrupts her marriage and sets into motion an increasingly grotesque chain of events at home. As her husband, her brother-in-law, and her sister each fight to reassert their control, Young Hai obsessively defends the choice that's become sacred to her. Soon their attempts turn desperate, subjecting first her mind, then her body to ever more intrusive and perverse violations, sending Young Hai spiraling into a dangerous, bizarre estrangement, not only from those closest to her, but also from herself. Celebrated by critics around the world, The Vegetarian is a darkly allegorical, Kafkaesque tale of power, obsession, and one woman's struggle to break free from the violence both outside and within her. It was really good. Definitely exploring in my opinion, vulnerabilities of sort of the mind, the psyche, and the uncontrollableness of it. And yet, she is happy a lot of the time. I do highly recommend it. I just don't think I'd pick it up again. Alright. What else? Ooh, let's do this one. This is a classic. This is by my favorite Bronte sister. This is the Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. She is my favorite. I actually thesised on her other book, Agnes Grey. My thesis was called In Defense of the Coquette, and a major part of it was defending the character of Rosalie Murray in Agnes Grey. However, this book is fascinating. So, the back of the book says, The Tenant of Wildfell Hall is a powerful and sometimes violent novel of expectation, love, oppression, sin, religion, and betrayal. It portrays the disintegration of the marriage of Helen Huntington, the mysterious tenant of the title, and her dissolute, alcoholic husband. Defying convention, Helen leaves her husband to protect their young son from his father's influence, and earns her own living as an artist. Whilst hiding at Wildfell Hall, she encounters Gilbert Markham, who falls in love with her. On its first publication in 1848, Anne Bronte's second novel was criticized for being coarse and brutal. The Tenant of Wildfell Hall challenges the societal conventions of the early 19th century in a strong defense of women's rights in the face of psychological abuse from their husbands. Anne Bronte's style is bold, naturalistic, and passionate, and this novel, which her sister Charlotte considered an entire mistake, has earned Anne a position in English literature in her own right, not just as the youngest member of the Bronte family. This book is so cool. To have a book about a woman leaving her abusive husband with her child and being effectively a single mother, living in a, hall. She's well off, which is interesting, but she's not like punished for being a single mother. It is just so interesting, and yeah, as the back of the book said, Charlotte Bronte hated this book. She actually, I believe, pulled it from publication after Anne died, because Charlotte outlived all of her siblings, and was just like, my sister was not in her right mind while she was writing this. She wouldn't want this published. But I think it's amazing. It does have kind of a weird ending in which she kind of has to reckon with the quite daring takes she makes throughout this book, but I don't think it ruins it. Not for me personally. This is a good one. Alright. What else? Ooh. This one. The Days of Afrekete is basically a black, overtly lesbian retelling of Mrs. Dalloway. Also modern too. It's a modern story. And I think saying retelling, it's not like it's definitely different. It's a reimagining, if you will. This was really interesting. I picked this up at the bookstore near me, and I started reading it. And then they started mentioning Bryn Mawr, which is my college. And they started mentioning Bryn Mawr with a little too much accuracy. So I looked up the author, and she's actually a professor at Haverford, which is a college nearby and connected to Bryn Mawr. A lot of students take classes at both colleges. Haverford is co-ed, Bryn Mawr is not. And I texted my friend about it, and she's had Asali Solomon as a professor before. I just didn't know about her. She's a creative writing professor. I'm actually really bummed I didn't get to take a class with her. This book is so interesting. Like Mrs. Dalloway, it takes place in a single day with a couple of flashbacks. Her writing is so good. And it's interesting to have a reimagining of Mrs. Dalloway that is both black and offering that perspective. The back of the book, I'll read it in a sec, says that it's inspired by Mrs. Dalloway, Sula, and Audre Lorde Zami. So to mix all those together, it's a very interesting take, especially because as much as I enjoy Virginia Woolf's writing, she gets a bit racist in there. But yeah, and to have a reimagining that is overtly lesbian, a lot of arguments can be made for Mrs. Dalloway, but this one is like, yeah. Oh, this is one that I picked up as an advanced reader's copy as well. Trying to figure out. Yeah. It was from 2021. Oh, I forgot to read the back of the book for Days of Afrekete. Liselle Belmont is having a dinner party. Her husband, Wynne, just lost his bid for the state legislature, and the time has come to thank supporters for their efforts. When an FBI agent shocks her with the news that Wynne might be facing corruption charges, an avalanche of questions tumbles around her. Who have they become? How much of herself has she lost? And how can she possibly make it through this party? Across town, Selena Octave is working her way through the same day just as she always does, one foot in front of the other. Her life has not been easy. The only time she was ever really happy was with Liselle back in college. They've lost touch, but as the day wears on, memories of Liselle begin to shift Selena's path. Inspired by Mrs. Dalloway, Sula, and Ultra Lord Sami, Asali Solomon's The Days of Afrekete is an electrifying and utterly human story of two women coming back with themselves and perhaps to each other. Alright, back to Girl 1. This is Girl 1 by Sarah Flannery Murphy. The back of the book just says, Orphan Black meets Margaret Atwood in this provocative, speculative thriller about female power and the bonds of sisterhood. This one was so intriguing, and it was so enjoyable. Basically, there used to be a cult. Our main character was born and spent early years of her childhood in this cult. It has since disbanded after a very traumatic event that no one really talks about. And for reasons that have been cropping up, she is now trying to find the rest of the daughters that were like her own age that grew up with her. Because they've all been like scattered throughout the country. It's really good. It's really good. I was not bored a single second. Yeah. It's quite long. The text is quite small. But it is totally worth it. Yeah, also, it's also gay. I didn't know it was gay when I picked it up, but it is. I just have that sixth sense, you know. Alright. This one is Duplex by Katherine Davis. I read this book for a sci-fi class I took in college. This book is so bizarre. It's so bizarre. It totally stuck with me. On a suburban street, much like any other, lives a school teacher named Miss Fix. Her house number is 49 at the lower end of the block. You could tell she was a real woman by the way she didn't have to move her head from side to side to take in sound. So we find ourselves thrown into a new universe, one that hovers disconcertingly close to our own. Love is no guarantee, not in these suburbs, nor is fame or even charm. As the novel unfolds, ominous rumors circulate, and the increasing agitation of the neighbors points to a future in which all will be lost. Soon a sorcerer's car will speed down the street. Past and future will fold into each other, and access to the eternally present moment that is a young girl's childhood will close forever. Beyond is adulthood, a world of robots and sorcerers, slaves and masters, bodies without souls. In Duplex, Katherine Davis has created a haunting and brilliant novel whose atmosphere is charged with an undercurrent of erotic menace. Once we enter this duplex, that magical hinge between past and future, human and robot, space and time, there's no telling who or what we might become. I wish I could write something this weird. I am so drawn to bizarreness. This is basically, I don't even know how to describe it, but it takes place in sort of this warped suburb. And it's very difficult to tell what is past, present, or future. It's so cool. I was so glad that I got the chance to read this for a class, and I got to discuss it. It's kind of been the biggest thing I've missed since graduating, is seminar discussions of books. But yeah, I wish I could do it. I wish my brain worked like this. Alright. I'm a little basic for this next one, and that's why I chose the second book in the series and not the first, but it is for the whole series, let's be real. The Locked Tomb series, I'm gay and basic, but you can see all the tabs in this book because I also wrote an essay on this for the same sci-fi class. There was a assignment where you could pick a book that wasn't, or you had to pick a book that wasn't on the, why am I blanking? The list of books for the class. The syllabus. And I picked this one. I actually like Harrow the Ninth better than Gideon the Ninth. I think my ranking right now, with Elector the Ninth not out yet, is Harrow the Ninth, Gideon the Ninth, Nona the Ninth. I think the fact that most of this book is told in what we believe to be second person is fascinating. I find Harrow fascinating. I think Tamsin Muir's writing style is bonkers. I could never do it. Her lore is intense sometimes. But I really do enjoy them. I do. And I definitely, yeah, I enjoy it. I'm running out of things to say that are unique about these books. But yeah, there's not really. Oh, let's read the summary. Harrowhark Nona Jesimus, the last necromancer of the Ninth House, has been drafted by her emperor to fight an unwinnable war. Side by side with a detested rival, Harrow must protect her skills and become an angel of undeath. But her health is failing, her sword makes her nauseous, and even her mind is threatening to betray her. Sealed in the gothic gloom of the Emperor's Mithraeum, with 3 unfriendly teachers haunted by the mad ghost of a murdered planet, Harrow must confront 2 unwelcome questions. Is someone trying to kill her? And if they succeeded, would the universe be better off? Yeah, I love it. I think it's so creative. I did, back when I had slightly longer hair, I did I painted my face like Harrow, I think it was during lockdown, actually, or maybe right after, I can't remember the timeline, but whatever it was, I tested positive for COVID, 2 days later. Alright, let's start wrapping this up. House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. I loved this book. This was another book that I talked a lot about in my Defense of the Coquette thesis. I would say this was probably the main book, with Agnes Grey coming second. think that this is just such an interesting, like, examination of how difficult it is to be in society during this time, which is the early 1900s, published in 1905. I'll read the back. Well, actually, an immensely popular bestseller upon its publication in 1905, The House of Mirth was Edith Wharton's first great novel. Set among the elegant brownstones of New York City in opulent country houses like the gracious Bellamont on the Hudson, the novel creates a satiric portrayal of what Wharton herself calls a society of irresponsible pleasure seekers, with a precision comparable to that of Proust, and her brilliant and complex characterization of the doomed Lily Bart, whose stunning beauty and dependence on marriage for economic survival reduce her to a decorative object, becomes an incisive commentary on the nature and status of women in that society. From her tragic attraction to the bachelor lawyer Lawrence Selden, to her desperate relationship with social climbing Rosedale, Lily is all too much of a product of the world indicated by the title, a phrase taken from Ecclesiastes, the heart of fools is in the House of Mirth, for it is Lily's very specialness that threatens the elegance and fulfillment she seeks in life. Along with the author's other masterpiece, The Age of Innocence, this novel claims a place among the finest American novels of manners. I was so interested in this book. It's tragic. Lily Bart is doomed. She's doomed from the start. And you could argue that this book is sort of telling of the punishments of being a coquette, of being a flirt, and unable to settle down during this time. And you could also read it as sort of a sympathy toward the coquette, which is sort of how I imagined it in my thesis. My good friend and I, we read it for the same class, and the professor of that class was actually not that great. She really didn't encourage discussion. She would just like read passages from the book during class time. But my friend and I would talk about it on, like, we'd go eat dinner and talk about it. And we have this like running dream to make a House of Mirth miniseries, and like a TV miniseries, because we feel like it would fit so well and it would work really well, and we would like text each other and I'd be like, oh, so like the House of Mirth miniseries should have this, this, and this. Maybe one day. She does work in TV. She works for a children's company right now, but I don't know. She's worked so hard. Alright. I just have a couple left. I also read this for a class, Female Husbands, A Trans History by Jen Mannion. This, similar to Before We Were Trans, is a collection of stories of trans histories. However, this one is a lot of quote-unquote female husbands, people who were either like trans or, you know, coming across as male to be in a lesbian relationship. And I really enjoyed this book. I think it is very, very interesting to explore trans histories, especially, you know, in this context of like these trans people found love, had love. They are female husbands. They are a part of a set, and that's always really cool to see. Alright. I think I'm gonna wrap it up there. I have a couple more books, but I think I don't really have anything super great or super interesting to say about them. And we're already at 50 minutes. Sorry, that was probably a really gross yawn. Yeah, so lots of books. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you look into at least one of these books. I tried to show a range of, fiction, new and old, non-fiction, short stories. But at the end of the day, I am mostly a fiction person. I'm mostly a novel person, so. Alright. I hope you have a great afternoon, evening, morning, whatever. And I will see you